Dad's money isn't yours now." My son smirked as he threw the papers down in front of me. I sat frozen, the weight of his words sinking deep into my chest. My breath caught, my hands trembling as I stared at the cold, calculating face of my own flesh and blood. He had always been the pride of our family, the boy who made something of himself. And now he was turning his back on me, just like that. I had given everything for him, his whole life, his upbringing, the sacrifices, the late nights. And yet, in the blink of an eye, it all seemed meaningless. He had the nerve to look at me and say that. My own son. I felt the tears welling up, but I swallowed them down. There was no room for weakness now. Not when he had already made his choice. "What are you going to do about it, Mom?" Brian sneered, crossing his arms, leaning back in the chair like he owned the place. He had always been good at pretending, at playing the perfect son when it suited him, but now it was as if all the pretense had disappeared. His true self was standing there in front of me, with that smug look I had never thought he was capable of. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, trying to grasp the reality of it all. I had raised him, loved him, and now he was casting me aside like I was some stranger, some burden he didn't want to deal with anymore. The thought stung more than I could express. But I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I had been through too much, survived too many battles to let this one defeat me. Slowly, I got up from my seat, the silence between us growing heavy. My legs felt weak, but my resolve was stronger than ever. I walked over to the small cabinet in the corner where I kept the family photos. I didn't even look at the picture of Brian as a child, holding my hand on his first day of school. I didn't have the strength for it. Instead, I grabbed the small envelope that had been sitting there for days. The legal papers I had been too afraid to look at until now. I could feel Brian's eyes on me, but I didn't turn around. I opened the envelope, unfolded the paper, and stared at the words in front of me. It was a will, a document that would decide the future of everything I had worked for, everything my late husband and I had built together. The inheritance, the house, the investments, everything was on the line. But as I read the fine print, a small, cold smile crept across my face. Brian thought he could manipulate me. He thought he could make a fool out of me. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to let him take what wasn't rightfully his. Not without a fight. And as I turned to face him, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside, I said, "You might think you've won, Brian, but you haven't." The next few days were a blur. Brian's words echoed in my head over and over again, and it felt like the walls were closing in. I didn't know where to turn or who to talk to. I had spent the past few years quietly mourning the loss of my husband, and now it seemed that even the family I had built was slipping away. But as each day passed, I could feel the tightness in my chest loosening. Not from relief, but from the slow realization that maybe I had been giving up my power for too long. That maybe, just maybe, I had let them believe they could walk all over me. But not anymore. I wasn't going to be that person. I had spent too many years being the quiet, patient mother, the one who gave without asking for anything in return. I had held the family together, through thick and thin. And yet, here I was, betrayed by the very ones I had loved and cared for. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. As I sat in the living room, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. It was Brian, his footsteps heavy as he entered. He had that same arrogant look on his face, the one he had worn when he told me I didn't deserve what my husband had left behind. "You still thinking about that stuff, Mom?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I looked up at him from my chair, my eyes narrowing slightly. There was a coldness there now, something that hadn't been there before. The mother who had always smiled, always forgave, was fading away, and in her place was a woman who had finally had enough. "I've been thinking about a lot of things," I said, my voice steady, but with an edge. Brian raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised at my calmness. For a moment, there was silence between us. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the sound so loud it almost felt like it was mocking us. "You're not getting any of it, Mom," Brian continued, stepping closer to me. "It's all mine now. You're old, you're not going to be able to keep up with all this. It's better this way." His words stung, but they didn't pierce me as deeply as they would have before. I had been preparing myself for this moment, for the harsh reality of what he had become. But there was something inside me now, something that refused to stay quiet any longer. I wasn't just going to sit back and let him take everything, take my dignity along with it. I stood up slowly, my joints aching as I did. The house felt different now. The once welcoming walls seemed cold and distant. "I'm not asking for anything from you, Brian," I said, my voice gaining strength. "But I won't just stand by and let you take what isn't yours." Brian looked at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and amusement. "What, are you going to fight me for it?" he sneered. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I walked over to the table where I had left the papers, the ones that would change everything. As I picked them up, I could feel the weight of them in my hands. The weight of the truth. I turned around and looked at him square in the eyes. "You think you've won," I said quietly. "But you haven't. Not yet." His smirk faltered for a second, and in that brief moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in him for years: doubt. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the same arrogance. "You're going to regret this," he warned. "You can't stop what's coming." I shook my head, the corners of my mouth turning up slightly in a bitter smile. "We'll see about that." I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let Brian or anyone else dictate my life anymore. I had fought for my family once, and I was ready to do it again. This time, it would be on my terms. I didn't sleep much that night. Thoughts swirled in my mind, racing faster than I could keep up. I had always considered myself a patient woman, a woman who gave everything for her family. But now, I was left wondering where it all went wrong. My son, Brian, the one I had raised, had turned against me, and the woman he married, Samantha, was no better. I had known that there were cracks in our family for years, but I had never imagined it would come to this. They were planning something bigger than just a simple disagreement. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, and it wasn't just about the money. It was about something deeper, something more personal. The next morning, I sat in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, trying to clear my head. The house felt emptier than usual. It was as if everything had shifted overnight, and I was left behind in a world that no longer made sense. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the table. I could hear the faint sound of Brian's car pulling into the driveway, but I didn't move. I knew he was coming, and I knew what he wanted. He had to make sure that I understood my place in all of this, to remind me that he had control. The door creaked open, and there he stood, dressed in his usual dark suit, his face as cold as ever. "We need to talk, Mom," Brian said, his voice flat, no hint of warmth or concern. "About what?" I replied, not bothering to look up from my cup. "The house. You can't keep it," he said, his tone matter of fact. "It's too much for you to handle. You're not in any position to manage it." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence between us stretch. I could feel the anger rising within me, but I kept it in check. There was no point in arguing with him, not now. "You really think I can't manage my own home?" I finally asked, my voice steady. Brian shrugged, a dismissive gesture. "It's just not practical. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's time you accept it." I set my cup down with a clink, finally meeting his gaze. "I don't need your permission to live in my own house," I said, my words calm, but the weight of them hanging in the air. "And I'm not going anywhere." Brian's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than arrogance in them. It was frustration, maybe even a hint of guilt. But it didn't last long. His smirk returned, colder than before. "You're not getting it, Mom. You never were. This isn't about what you want. This is about what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I repeated, incredulously. "You mean what's best for you?" His silence spoke volumes, and in that moment, I knew that this wasn't just about the house or the money. This was about control. He and Samantha had been planning this for months, maybe even longer. They wanted everything, and they weren't going to stop until they had it. I stood up slowly, my legs aching as I did, but I held my ground. "I won't be pushed out, Brian," I said, my voice low but firm. "I've spent my whole life building this family, and I'll be damned if I let you tear it down." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, with a cold, final glance, he turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there, feeling the weight of his departure. But it wasn't over. It wasn't over by a long shot. I didn't know how I was going to fight back, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. I had lived too long, fought too hard, to be treated like this. I would make sure they understood that. The days passed, but the sting of Brian's words didn't fade. I spent my time moving through the motions, cooking meals, cleaning the house, but my mind was always racing, trying to find a way to make things right. I could feel the walls closing in on me, but I wasn't going to let him win. Not like this. One afternoon, as I sat by the window, looking out at the yard that had been so full of life when my husband was still here, I heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. It was Brian again. I had expected him to come back, to try to push me further, but I wasn't prepared for what he would say next. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, standing at the door, his tone more urgent than before. I didn't invite him in. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. "What now, Brian?" I asked, my voice flat. "I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I've been hard on you," he said, his words almost soft, like he was trying to coax me into believing him. I could see through it, though. The guilt in his eyes was fleeting, replaced almost immediately by that same smirk. "I just think it's time for you to let go of the house, Mom. It's not yours to keep anymore. It's too much for you." I felt the anger rising, but I kept it in check. I had to. "What do you mean, it's not mine? I've lived here for years, Brian. This house was built with your father and me, and I'm not just going to walk away from it because you say so." Brian sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. "It's just a house, Mom. It's not about the house. It's about the future. You can't keep pretending you can manage everything on your own." I stood up slowly, my joints aching as I did. The air felt thick with the tension between us. "You're wrong, Brian. I've managed just fine on my own for years. Your father and I worked hard to build a life here. This house is a part of that life. It's not just a building to me. It's everything. It's just stuff, Mom. It's just things. It's not worth holding on to when it's causing this much trouble," Brian said, his voice losing its softness, the edge returning. "You're not the same person you used to be. You've changed." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I refused to cry in front of him. "No, Brian. I haven't changed." "You have," I said, my voice shaking. "I've always been here for you, and now you're turning your back on me. You don't see what you're doing. You're so focused on what you can take, you don't even care about the people you're hurting." Brian took a step forward, but I held my ground. "This isn't about me taking something from you. This is about doing what's best for the family," he said, but I could hear the lie in his words. He wasn't doing this for the family. He was doing this for himself, for the control he wanted, and he was willing to sacrifice everything, his mother, his family, for it. I felt a coldness wash over me as I realized the truth. The person I had trusted, the person I had loved and raised, was gone. In his place was a stranger, someone who saw me as nothing more than a burden. "I'm not going anywhere, Brian," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "You can't push me out. This is my home. And if you want to take it, you're going to have to go through me." He didn't respond right away, but I could see the flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe regret. Maybe guilt. But it was gone before it could reach the surface. "Fine," he said, his voice hardening. "But don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there, my heart heavy with the weight of it all. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him take what was mine without a fight. I was stronger than he thought. And I wasn't going to lose. Not yet. It had been a week since Brian left that day, and I still couldn't shake the weight of the conversation. He had made it clear, his words still stung like fresh cuts. But every day I woke up, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him push me out. I didn't know what his next move would be, but I was ready. I had to be. The house felt emptier now, like a part of it had been torn away. It wasn't just the walls that had changed, but everything in it. The memories of raising Brian, of building a life with my husband. It all seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. And yet, despite the quiet sorrow that surrounded me, there was something else growing inside. Something stronger. I had spent too long being passive, letting others decide what was best for me. No more. A few days later, as I sat in my favorite chair by the window, I heard the soft sound of the doorbell ringing. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I had learned to expect the unexpected with Brian. I opened the door to find an old family friend, Evelyn, standing there. She had always been a kind soul, and I could see the concern in her eyes as she looked at me. "Margaret, are you okay?" she asked gently. I forced a smile, stepping aside to let her in. "I'm fine, Evelyn. Just figuring things out," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She didn't buy it. "I can see that," she said, her voice full of sympathy. "But I know something's wrong. I've been hearing things." I raised an eyebrow, unsure where this conversation was headed. "What do you mean?" "You know what's been happening, right?" Evelyn asked, lowering her voice. "About the house and Brian." My chest tightened. I didn't want to talk about it, but I could tell she wasn't going to let it go. I nodded slowly. "I know what he said. I know what he's trying to do. But this is my house, and I'm not going anywhere." Evelyn looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. "Margaret, I'm not sure you know this, but there's something else going on here. Something Brian and Samantha aren't telling you." I froze, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely able to keep the fear out of my voice. Evelyn took a deep breath, then told me something that I hadn't expected. "I overheard them talking. They're planning to sell the house, Margaret. They've already contacted a realtor. They're going to take everything from you." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. "What? How do you know?" I whispered. "I know, because I heard them, Margaret. And I don't want to see you lose everything," Evelyn said, her eyes full of worry. I stared at her in disbelief, my hands trembling as I processed what she had just told me. Brian wasn't just trying to push me out of the house. He was going to take it away from me completely. A rush of anger and determination flooded through me. No, I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not after everything I had sacrificed, everything I had worked for. "What should I do?" I asked, the question heavy in the air. Evelyn's expression softened. "You need to take action, Margaret. You can't let them walk all over you. I know a lawyer, someone who can help. But you have to be prepared to fight for what's yours." Her words resonated deeply within me. I had been a quiet, patient mother for so long, but I wasn't going to let them take everything I had left. I was stronger than I had realized, and if this was the fight I had to face, then so be it. "I won't let them take my home," I said, my voice filled with resolve. Evelyn smiled at me, a sense of relief washing over her face. "I knew you had it in you." As she left, I felt something shift inside me. The weight on my shoulders hadn't disappeared, but now I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let Brian and Samantha tear my world apart. I would fight for what was mine. And I would make sure they understood just how strong I truly was. The following week, I found myself sitting in the small lawyer's office, my heart pounding with anticipation. I had spent the past few days gathering everything I could, documents, receipts, anything that could prove I had a right to stay in this house. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about standing my ground, about showing Brian that I wasn't going to back down. My fingers nervously drummed on the table as I waited for the lawyer to arrive. The office smelled of old paper and coffee, a reminder of the many battles that had been fought within these walls. I was no stranger to hardship, but this was different. This was my own flesh and blood, someone I had raised, someone I had trusted. The door clicked open, and a man in his late 50s walked in. He had a serious demeanor, his sharp suit and glasses giving him an air of authority. "Mrs. Thompson, I presume?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. "Please call me Margaret," I said, finally managing a smile. "I've reviewed the paperwork you provided, and I must say, your situation is quite clear. We'll have to move quickly if we're going to stop your son from selling the house," the lawyer said, sitting down across from me. "How much time do we have?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Not much. If they've already contacted a realtor, they could move forward with the sale at any moment." But if we act fast, we can at least delay the process long enough to put a hold on it legally, he explained, opening a folder on his desk. The weight of his words hit me like a wave. I had to act. I couldn't wait for Brian to make the next move. I had to beat him to it. What do I need to do? I asked, leaning forward. The lawyer paused for a moment, studying me, as though trying to determine how much fight I had left in me. You'll need to sign a few documents, and I'll begin drafting a legal challenge to the sale. You've been living here for years, and your husbands should have outlined your rights. I believe we can make a strong case, he said, his voice confident. What about Brian? He's not going to let this go without a fight. Of course, he'll resist. But the law is on your side. You've lived here. You've invested your life into this home. There's no reason he should be able to take it from you, the lawyer reassured me. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief mixed with anxiety. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. Let's do it, I said, my voice firmer than I had ever heard it. As the lawyer began to prepare the necessary documents, I felt a shift inside me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting to what Brian had done. I was taking control. This wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about my dignity, my right to live my life without being bullied into submission. I wasn't going to let him dictate my future. The lawyer handed me a pen and I signed the papers, the weight of each stroke a reminder of the battle I was about to face. As I left the office, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. I had no idea what the next few weeks would bring, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Brian win. Not this time. Not ever. The days that followed were filled with tension. I kept to myself, focusing on gathering my thoughts and preparing for the inevitable battle ahead. Brian had no idea what was coming. I had made the decision to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I wasn't going to let him take everything from me without a challenge. As the lawyer worked on the paperwork, I spent time organizing everything I could find, every scrap of evidence that could help my case. The memories of my husband, the years we spent together building this life, flooded my mind. Every room in this house held a story, a piece of us. And now, Brian was trying to take it all away, like it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything. One afternoon, I went through some old boxes in the attic. I found photos, letters, and documents from the past, things I hadn't thought about in years. There was a letter from my husband, written just a few months before he passed. He had always been the steady one, the one who held everything together when things got tough. In his letter, he told me how much he loved me, how much he appreciated everything I had done for him and for the family. As I read the letter, tears welled up in my eyes. It was a reminder of who I was, who we were, and why I had to fight for this house, for our life together. I could hear Brian's voice in my head, telling me that the house was too much for me, that I couldn't handle it. But I wasn't going to let him rewrite our history. I wasn't going to let him erase the memories we had made here. The next morning, I called the lawyer to check on the progress. We're almost ready, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. We've filed the papers, and we've sent a notice to the realtor. This will slow things down for a while, but we'll need to act quickly to prevent the sale from going through. I thanked him, my heart pounding in my chest. The clock was ticking, but at least I was doing something. I wasn't just sitting back and letting them take everything. As the week went on, I began to notice small changes in Brian's behavior. He seemed more distant, more aloof, as if he was trying to distance himself from me. I caught him avoiding eye contact, and when he did speak to me, it was as if he was trying to convince himself that he was right, that what he was doing was justified. But I knew better. I knew the truth. And I wasn't going to let him win. One evening, Brian came over, his face tense as he stepped into the living room. He didn't look at me at first, but I could feel his presence, the tension between us palpable. You really think this is going to work, don't you? He asked, his voice tight with frustration. You're just delaying the inevitable. The house is mine, and you can't stop me. I stood up slowly, my heart beating fast. I had been preparing for this moment. I had to stay calm, no matter what he said. I'm not trying to stop you, Brian, I said, my voice steady. I'm trying to protect what's mine. What your father and I built together. This house isn't just a property to me. It's our home. And I won't let you take it from me. For a moment, there was silence between us. Brian looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes, something that resembled doubt. But it was gone just as quickly as it had appeared. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You're wasting your time," he said, turning to leave. "You're not going to win this." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. His words didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was standing up for myself, for what was right. And no matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to take that away from me. As Brian walked out the door, I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore. I had made my decision, and I was going to see this through to the end. I was ready to fight. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. The days stretched on, and I could feel the weight of everything bearing down on me. But I had a sense of calm now, a certainty in my bones. Brian had no idea how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. The legal documents had been filed, and there was no turning back. The house, the memories, everything I had built with my husband, it was all at stake. But this time, I was ready for the fight. It was early morning when the phone rang. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, when I saw the name of the lawyer flash across the screen. My heart skipped a beat as I answered. "Margaret, we've got a problem," the lawyer said, his voice tight with urgency. "The realtor is pushing forward with the sale. They've scheduled a viewing for tomorrow." My stomach sank. I knew they were trying to rush things, but I didn't realize they would act so quickly. "What can we do?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. "We can file an injunction to halt the sale, but we need to move fast." "We don't have much time," he replied. "I'll be at your house this afternoon to go over the paperwork. We need to make sure everything's in order." I hung up the phone, my hands trembling slightly. It was now or never. I had to stop them before it was too late. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls and paperwork. When the lawyer arrived later that afternoon, we went over the details again. He was calm and precise, reassuring me that we had a solid case, but the urgency in his voice was clear. As he prepared the injunction, I felt a sense of purpose rising in me. I had spent too many years being overlooked, too many years putting others first. I wasn't going to let my son and his wife take everything I had left. When the papers were finally signed, I felt a small surge of victory. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but it was a start. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse with the lawyer. We filed the injunction, and I could feel the tension in the air as we waited. Every moment felt like it stretched on forever. But when the judge finally called us into his office, I breathed a sigh of relief. The injunction was granted. The sale was on hold for now. It was a temporary victory, but it was something. When I got back home, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was still fighting, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life. But I knew the battle wasn't over. Brian wouldn't give up that easily. Later that afternoon, as I sat in the living room, reflecting on everything that had happened, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, I was surprised to see Brian standing there, his face unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, his tone colder than I had ever heard it. I didn't invite him in. I wasn't ready for that conversation. "What is it, Brian?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "This isn't just about the house. It's about the future. You're making a huge mistake." "No, Brian," I replied calmly, stepping aside to let him in. "You're the one who's making a mistake. I'm not going to sit back and let you take everything from me. This house, my life, it's mine, and I'm not giving it up." Brian looked at me, his jaw clenched, but there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Was it regret? Maybe guilt? I couldn't be sure, but it didn't matter. "I'm not backing down," I continued, my voice firm. "I've already taken the necessary steps to protect myself. I filed for an injunction. You can't sell the house. Not now." For a moment, Brian said nothing. His eyes darted away, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Finally, he spoke. "You think you can just stop everything? You think you can hold on to this house forever?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. I don't need to hold on to it forever, Brian, I said quietly. I just need to hold on to it long enough to prove that I'm not just going to be walked all over. He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The fight was far from over, but I was no longer the passive woman I had once been. I had a plan now, and I was going to see it through. I wasn't going to let Brian or anyone else take what was mine. The days following Brian's visit felt heavier than ever. The injunction had bought me time, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he would come back, more determined than ever to take what he thought was his. The house was still mine, but the fight had only just begun. I spent the next few days preparing. I dug deeper into my husband's old files, looking for anything that could help me build a stronger case. I found old bank statements, investment records, and even the original deed to the house. My husband had always been meticulous about keeping everything organized, and now it was proving to be a lifesaver. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much I had overlooked in the past. My husband had always protected me, and now it was my turn to protect his legacy. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me, but I wasn't about to give up. The following week, as I sat at the kitchen table going over the papers, the doorbell rang again. I hesitated for a moment, wondering who it could be. When I opened the door, I was surprised to find Evelyn standing there, her face serious. "Margaret, I think we need to talk," she said, her voice low. I stepped aside, letting her in. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling a pang of unease. "It's Brian," she said, lowering her voice as she glanced around the room. "He's not done. He's planning to take things even further." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's been talking to a lawyer. I overheard him say that he plans to contest the will if the house doesn't go through. He's not going to let it go easily," Evelyn explained, her eyes filled with concern. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had expected Brian to push back, but this was something else. "He's going to contest the will?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Evelyn nodded, her gaze firm. "Yes. He's already made some calls. He's trying to find a way to get everything." I stood there for a moment, processing what she had said. Brian was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. He wasn't just after the house anymore, he was after everything. "I can't let him do this," I said, the words coming out more forcefully than I had intended. "I won't let him take everything we've worked for." "You need to prepare yourself, Margaret," Evelyn said gently. "He's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. But I believe in you. I know you can fight this." Her words gave me a small sense of hope, but I knew that the real fight was still ahead. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. That evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that Brian was closing in on me. The house felt so empty without my husband, without the life we had built together. But it was still my home, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. The next day, I met with the lawyer again. We went over the new developments, and he assured me that the will was still valid. But I could see the worry in his eyes. "We have a strong case, Margaret, but this is going to get ugly," he said, his tone serious. "We'll have to act fast, but you have to be prepared for a long fight. Brian won't give up without a battle." I nodded, feeling the weight of the words. This was far from over, and I wasn't going to back down. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the photo of my husband on the mantel. It was a reminder of everything we had been through, everything we had built. I wasn't going to let Brian destroy it all. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. I wasn't just fighting for the house, I was fighting for my dignity, for my future, for the life I had shared with my husband. And I would fight with everything I had. Brian wouldn't take this from me. Not now. Not ever.